Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is sponsored by 3on3 Hoops Hub. 3on3 Hoops Hub has run over 350 3on3 basketball leagues for kids since 1997. 3on3 is the ideal format for players to get a lot of opportunities, work on all skills and positions, and have fun with their friends. Whether you want to build your program, raise some funds, or start your own business, you can bring 3on3 to your community and do it like an expert by learning from the best with 3on3 Hoops Hub's free 90-minute training. You can register at the link in the show notes. Anytime I get to talk to a coach that's been at one place for a long time and had sustained success, not just we love the seasons where, golly, we just had a special group of players. They did amazing things, but the ability over seasons and maybe even a decade to have sustained success, that's hard. What are some of the standards or pillars of your program?
So when that happened, like the story I told earlier, when we kind of lost in the first round 3 years in a row, and don't, I'm not trying to, I don't want if the guys.
It's not a negative thing towards them.
They were good teams, right? And they may have beat us still. Well, one of them, it was Allen during that. They got to the Final Four, and we didn't really play that. But it happened in that stretch. But the other 2 times we beat them, so we could beat them, And not to say that it's not easy to beat a team again, but you could. We were different. You know what I mean? When you watched the game, we were different, and it wasn't the same energy. It wasn't the same. So anyway, what came out of that, I was like, what are we? What are we doing? What are we standing for? So I asked my assistants to tell me, like, all right, what do I value? Thinking about how I coach, what I emphasize during practice, how I coach the kids, what are my values? You tell me based on my actions. So they kind of gave me some feedback. And then I asked some alumni, both kids who had great experience and kids who didn't have great experience, like, what do you think? I'll tell you, that's a nerve-wracking thing to do, because I'm sitting here praying, like, I hope they don't just all say winning, and I hope all he cares about is winning and winning at all costs and all that. And so what came out of that was communication, accountability, coachability, and competitiveness, which I like that list. I thought that made me feel good that, okay, I am kind of trying to do this. But now we kind of really emphasize those things. And it's kind of been fun because once we named the things, we kind of dove into them a little bit more. And I've learned more about it a little bit, And so those are kind of our pillars. We have kind of a base mantra, burn the boats. You've heard that name, burn the boat. So burn the boats is kind of the foundation. Then our pillars are the 4 pillars, I just said. And it's with the idea being become great teammates is the goal. And hopefully they can, in those big moments, I think if you think about what I have to do, 1-point game, we're getting ready to inbound. Well, if you're thinking about what you have to do, all of a sudden maybe you're thinking how you might screw it up. Whereas if you're thinking about how you can help, all of a sudden you're thinking about what do I need to do?
Yeah. And
not thinking about what do I not want to do. And you get those kids to constantly be thinking about, it's hard and it doesn't work all the time. It probably doesn't work more than it doesn't, but than it does. But to try to get them to think about how they can help their teammates or where they can contribute when the under a minute, those tight situations is kind of the hope, with all this is hopefully those pillars guide them to that, to where it's a constant, how can I contribute and help my teammates?
If let's just hypothetical, if your players were to walk in and they got on with us, and I asked them, hey, what are the pillars of your program? What do you think? Do you think you would have a lot of guys that could rattle them off, or do you think they would look at me with look?
They know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But no, I don't think we just did it. I usually gave them a quiz. So the first thing we did is I gave them a quiz of the things we talk about a lot. And I think, and just to see, and I said, look, there's no wrong answer.
I want to dive in. You just typed up questions and
I handed them out. And I said, this is for me, not for you. I want to know how good a job I did at teaching you guys these things.
Wow.
And man, I think we had like 30 of them, and I don't think anybody got all four, and overall it wasn't bad though. I mean, because like competitiveness, a lot of the varsity guys forgot competitiveness.
Yeah.
Because it's every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when I sit there, like, oh yeah. And then there's things we don't, you know what I mean? They almost wave their hand.
Yeah, because you could take that the other way. They forgot competitiveness. Oh crap!
No,
no.
It's almost so ingrained.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they didn't even think about it. Like there's another one. So we have what do we not do during practice? And it's we don't get the ball with one hand. We don't walk. We don't grab our knees. So two things that were really interesting about that one is they forgot don't grab our knees because they don't. And we didn't remind them. It just has become a habit for those older kids.
That's a good place to be.
And when I brought, they go, yeah, we don't do that. But then I learned there's two that I didn't even think about that they put on there. They're like, well, there's more than three. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because we got our shirt tucked in to start the practice, and we don't leave balls laying around. I was like, you're right.
Man,
so
what a helpful tool.
So here's what we do on Monday. So they play so many tournaments.
Yeah.
And you'll have kids that play 8 games.
Yep.
And we practice kind of one speed. So like, my brother's with the Pelicans. So when they come into Dallas, they'll come to our practices. And he just like, I forgot how hard high school kids practice. He's like, because they don't, NBA guys don't practice like that.
Right.
They can't.
They can't.
They can't.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to manage. But he's like, God, and he's right. And so if we don't pull the leash back, they're going to go again, and I kind of got this from Coach Gregory at Timberview. I've kind of tweaked it to fit us, but so on Mondays, we don't do any in the morning. So this is kind of cool at our school. We have 2 periods before and after school that could be athletic periods. So it can be, as long as it's 45 minutes, it can be on either end of it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So as long as we just do one. So we go after school on Mondays, and the first 15 minutes is talking about a culture. We'll show them a video or talk. And that's what this quiz was great for. It's like, all right, where do we not really know some of this stuff? Mm. And so those Mondays are going to be focused on these quizzes. And we're not like I'm mad at them. Like, to be honest, this is where I failed, is helping these kids, because if they're good at these things, it's going to help them be successful in our program. Whereas if they don't know these things, then I let them down, because these are things I look for subconsciously. Like I didn't come up with these. This is the things that I think it's important they understand these, because it's going to help us, and it's going to help them get where they want to be, and so this information is where I messed up. So let's fix it on these Mondays. And then we go get a bunch of shots up, and so to kind of help them not overdo it.
There's been so much gold already in our talk, but I do think that might be one of the best things so far, is actually having your players take a quiz on your standards, your pillars. What do we hang our hat on? What are some of the concepts that we believe in and how we have to live? I work with Matt Garnett. I don't know if you know him. Matt Garnett, he was a college coach for a little while at Wayland Baptist, but he does MG basketball camps. And we did a team camp, and one of the questions that I was doing a session with them is, raise your hand if you know what your coach values. And I kind of told them that also could be called pillars or standards, and only a couple people. So like, how many of us believe that our programs stand for something and our players know our vision, but they don't?
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, it wasn't that disappointing, because you think about it, none of the seniors were in there. So the guys that were in it for 4 years, like, these are guys that had 3 weeks off and we lost, then spring break, then came back, and I give them a piece of paper, so they're familiar with. I wasn't discouraged. It wasn't like, we had a couple of kids that was blanks, basically, but we had some freshmen that nailed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I just think like all the things you talked about, it's an evaluation tool. Where's this group at? What do we need to? What do we need to focus on? You've said it actually.
Where do I need to be better? Like, they don't understand competitiveness, or they got it great. I don't know. Yeah. We're still figuring that out, So
you said it at the very beginning, though, about the book you read and what teachers are doing to help students learn. Like, for us to think that doesn't apply to how we coach, I think that's silly. So making sure that this evaluation tool and things like that, we know where they are, so we can base our instruction and what we're doing in practice on what their real needs are, not just this written out, this is what we do every year on this day. I think there's a lot of brilliance to that.
Well, and the thing is, and this is not mine. You know what I mean? So I'm with you, but it's like focusing on creating the best way for them to learn and not creating the best place for me to talk. And like making that change, because like I got to get all this out. They got to know this stuff. They got to hear this stuff, as opposed to how can they learn it? It's a really good mental shift when you're approaching practice. There's another thing that came up in that book that's been huge for my patients. And so we're going to do shell today, and we're going to really work on baseline drives, backside guide drop. And so then my assistant, I'll say, "Oh, where are they going to screw up?" It's like, well, this, the ball side guy's going to drop too low probably, and the backside guy will be late getting the backside, or the 45 cut's going to be wide open because we're not seeing both, and so we anticipate what they're going to mess up. And so when they mess it up, we're not reacting. I can't believe you did that. We're like, yeah, okay, hold on. So here's what just happened. You know what I mean? And you kind of have a response ready, and then maybe you even have some questions ready. Like, okay, why did you get that? You know what I mean? So, and very rarely, especially the stuff that you do all the time, like it's probably, there's not a whole lot of stuff you're surprised on that when they mess up some 5-out reads. You know what I mean? Or your zone. You run the zone. So there's certain things that they're going to struggle with. So very rarely you caught off guard, but then to have some questions to help them work through it on their own. That's the other thing in that book. You ask questions instead of telling first. You say, okay, what'd you see, or what'd you think, or what were you watching? And all of a sudden they're like, I was watching this. It's like, why? Like, I don't know. I know. And I don't know. But if they say I don't know, that's your fault. That's the other thing.
Yeah, accountability. Yeah.
If I ask you a question and you don't know, that's on me. But it's great information that they have the courage to say that, as opposed to start guessing for 20 minutes, and then you can move on quicker. And so
I wonder how many times I'm coaching. I'm not really coaching. I'm just reacting. Like that was a great point.
And that's the thing that helps with it, though. And then it helped me with it, though, too, is especially if I want to get fired up, and it's so much better when you're in control of when you get fired up versus when it just happens because they did something. So when it needs to be a practice where the urgency is high and the pace is high and the intensity is high, okay, when this happens, I'm going to get them with this. And when they skip it and we're late on that closeout, or we don't X switch, I'm going to get them, but they're not paying attention. I can tell them, especially if it's him, because I know he knows. You know what I mean? But then it's so good because you're choosing it.
Yeah.
And that's what this book did. Is it just kind of gave you this plan, like you almost plan your responses to things that might happen by anticipating them. And so it helps you handle it better to where they're learning and you're not saying, and that's the thing, man. How are they going to learn it? It's just like, and every day I look back and I was like, oh, I messed that up, and sometimes you nail it, but like to go into it anticipating where they're going to need help is good.
Take out the guesswork, stop relying on chance. Like I hope that they get it. By having that type of plan that you have, coach speak is just something that PGC helped me a lot with. But you hear it. You even go watch games and you hear it. I'm sure in my practice, if I was going to record myself, I would just hear empty phrases and chatter that actually aren't based on to anybody or are they're only to make me feel good. Yeah. But I think the precision that you're talking about with coaching, it's just next level.
But like realize the day I recorded myself, I was really working on all this and I was cringing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, it's hard. It's just good ideas. It's hard to do. But it is a good shift that I'd recommend a lot of guys looking is this a good learning environment for these guys to get, because anytime you leave, you leave something feeling better, like you learn something, like you got better is better. That's the real definition of kind of fun, you know. It's when you get the most fun is when you feel like, man, that was. My soccer coach says all the time, leave them lying on the court, exhausted and smiling. Right? Like that's the goal. I mean, if you can do that every practice.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, yeah, it's a great little thing.
How many coaches leave them lying on the court, but there's no smile?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot. Sometimes that's okay. If you choose it. You know, if it happens because you lost your mind.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.